snowy, cold Oswego day. So, first item on the agenda, the minutes. Did everybody get the minutes in the mail? Okay.
Make a motion?
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second on the minutes?
I'll second the minutes.
Motion and a second. Any additions, errors, or corrections? All those in favor?
Alright.
Opposed? Carried. Treasurer's report, the October 31st Treasurer's report. Everybody get that in the mail also?
Yes.
Move it.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions on the Treasurer's report? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Notice of the meeting was posted in the Palladium Times on February 5th, 2020. And now, we're gonna go into executive session and
I'll make a motion.
make a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. What time is it?
9:07.
9:07?
Oh,
Who did second? I'm sorry.
excuse me. Morris.
I
Kevin,
thought
better
that
get
was
that.
Morris.
And Kevin, the reason we're going into executive session?
To discuss the financial history of a particular person or corporation,
Okay. So now we're,
and to discuss, I believe, to discuss property acquisition as well.
okay, now we're going into executive session for the next few items.
session.
Evan, are we ready?
Great.
We're live.
Okay, so,
Let's call Andrew.
well, not yet.
Okay.
We're gonna do a quick discussion first.
Let's take care of the stuff we did in executive session first. We talked about in executive session. Number 4 was the pilot negotiation update. Do we need, we don't need to vote on that, correct? The deferment request for D&D logging, number 5. We need to vote on that, approving the deferment.
I'll move it.
Second.
All, any discussion? All those in favor? Approved. Maples Assisted Living Facility, the HUD PDF loan.
I'll move it.
Second.
Len and Morris. Any further discussion outside of the executive? All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. The delinquent loan payment was just, the pilot payment was just an update. The Wall Climbing Center LLC charge off the bad debt based on the past agreement. I'll entertain motions on charging that off.
Motion.
Gary, second.
Second.
Morris, all those in favor? Approved. Delinquent loan report. Make a motion to approve the delinquent loan report.
I'll make it.
Morris,
Second.
second by Barry, all those in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries. The property acquisition was just an update, and then we're on to number 11. Gary can take over from there.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Okay, we're gonna jump into Economic Advancement Plan. I apologize, Dave and I got this last night, their proposal, and we had a chance to talk to Andrew and text him, well, not talk to him, but text him with some of the questions on it. And I know it's kind of short notice, but there's been just some discussion as far as where we stand with it. And I'm gonna put Andrew on, we're gonna call him so we can discuss it with him in a few minutes, but I wanted to take a little time here to discuss it beforehand. I know there were some issues, there's some questions, I shouldn't say issues, as far as the way it was written. What I was thinking about doing, and again, I wanna get the board's input on it too, is have Andrew discuss each action plan, agribusiness, with the co-chairs and the chairs of the agribusiness committee, discuss infrastructure with the infrastructure, leaders of the infrastructure committee, refine their engagement, what they propose, and then when everything, when they agree to, this is the plan we wanna go with, exercise it, our payment, and move forward with it. And I guess I'm just looking for input from the board and from Dave on what you think.
Just to clarify, to back up a little bit for a little bit of history into this. Dave and Gary and I were at a phone call with Andrew and Ben last week and discussed the previous proposal that was in our packet today. And out of that discussion came the plan to not fund the $20,000 to just create a new convening authority and make it, set up a new committee, and to focus on the infrastructure portion of the project and the agribusiness portion of the project, and have Center State focus, have a directive from us as to what we want them to work on those two projects. And based on that conversation, my understanding was that they were gonna do some grant writing for us associated with the project that we're talking about in Phoenix. As far as we've got the land acquisition going, we'll be working with the town of Schuylkill and the village of Phoenix and the IDA and the county, 4 different groups to coordinate this project and to improve the Phoenix wastewater treatment plant and the conveyance between the plant and the industrial park, and then any improvements that need to be made to the industrial park once the property is acquired, and our part of it is acquiring the property. So that's part of the agribusiness situation, and it ties into the infrastructure section. The other part of it would be for them to write an RFP for us, so that we can then send out a request for proposal to engineering firms to create a picture of what exists and logistically for wastewater treatment throughout the county, and find out what each one of those plants has as far as ownership is concerned, as far as financial situation is concerned, and any bonding that may be out there, any assets that they own and liabilities, and get a clear picture of what we actually have, not just on the ground, but in the financial aspect of it too. And so their part would be to write the RFP for us at that point, and to get some people to the table to make sure that we're all on the same page, I guess. Based on what I've heard from Gary, that's not exactly what's in this plan. I'm not sure.
It touches on it.
So-
What they did is they adjusted their prices for engagement from a minimum to a maximum. And the maximum includes everything, including the grant writing. And I think it's gotta be fine tuned. Dave was concerned about the timing of applying for some of the grants, whether it was being done soon enough. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to the infrastructure end of it, as far as, getting a hold of municipalities and the operators of the sewage treatment plants, getting their feelings as far as putting together, an authority. And there's a lot of different things that are involved. And Dave, you wanna speak on that end of it, as far as, what we discussed?
Yeah, I think that this proposal came a lot closer to what we were hoping for than the first one. I like that it was broken out and that we had options on proceeding down different paths once we had better information. So for example, on what they call the Agricultural Innovation Park, whatever it's gonna be called in Schuylkill, their first task is really to help us identify if it's feasible and sustainable. And it makes sense to understand that before we agree to pay them to do things like seek funding to make it happen, if we find out that, that's really not gonna be the best solution for that property. So I like that structure. I questioned the timing of some of the initiatives with respect to getting the municipalities involved later in the process as opposed to in the beginning. I questioned whether making a URI application in December or November was gonna be too late in the process, not knowing the status of what was going on with those funds. And I got reasonable responses from Andrew on both of those that gave me some comfort. The same thing with the infrastructure plan. While infrastructure is a part of the Schuylkill project, the overall concept of having an authority requires a lot of better understanding, both mechanical, financial, and legal. And sorry about this. Having them or someone help us identify all the information we need and lay out a path to go forward, I think we can benefit from. Whether or not this is exactly how we want to word it, I think deserves a little bit more discussion, clarify what our expectations are. But I also had some, because they hadn't seen it and because it was based on recommendations from the ag group, I shared it with Shane and Tim, and they both have some concerns about the language in there as well. So my suggestion to Gary was that we take a little bit more time, refine it, and make sure that what we have interpreted as the priorities of the Ag Committee are what they are still planning to move forward. I think they're one of the more robust groups that came out of this exercise last year. They met frequently, they had a lot of good stakeholders at the table, and to go forward without their involvement, if we're gonna focus on that, I think would be a mistake. So, not saying that let's not do this, saying let's make sure it's refined to a point where we're all comfortable with the language. This was no disrespect to Andrew, he threw it together while he was on vacation, and we didn't have any communication while he was doing that, and I think that would have helped. But I think we'd all be well served by taking a little bit more time and getting folks on the Ag Committee involved as well. And it wouldn't hurt to, run it by. I'm comfortable with the way they've described the infrastructure piece, but probably would be respectful to run it by the members of the committee and say, here's where we're going with the priorities that you identified.
So I guess, Andrew, we're gonna call him in a few minutes so he can speak on it. But what I was looking at was have Andrews, as soon as he can, discuss infrastructure with Dave and whoever that was on the committee and just fine tune it. So they have a direction they're going with it, they're comfortable as far as the timeline, what needs to be done, everything. And then do the same with the agribusiness, with Nick sitting in and participating with Tim Hardy and Shane to make sure they're comfortable, everything's addressed, that they feel is what needs to be done. And then,
Are these the best people in general? I just feel like they're a low value provider. Is there any better,
well, we
we
started.
don't know what we got out of the last one, do we, for 60 grand?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't support this in any manner because they haven't given us the deliverables from the first one.
They gave us deliverables, but I didn't share them with you. It was more of a graph set up and what they did. The only thing I can, say is they did set the meetings up. They did narrow us down to 5 action items that we thought were priorities, helped us put the committees together. The committees come out with the recommendations and we reported it. Now it's up to us, and we've taken 3 of the action items, the portal, infrastructure, and agribusiness is 3 of the more critical, important areas that we can do, and something that we can really sink our teeth into, move forward for another year on that, with their assistance.
But in the consulting world, 60 grand at $20 an hour is 600 hours. Did somebody from that place even come close to investing 600 hours in what we bought the first time? And are they gonna invest 350 hours in this? I'm not seeing it. Not to be negative, I just don't see it.
What was that numbers again?
If they're selling at 100 or 120 bucks an hour, if you count their secretary, admin assistant, and their producer, and you got $60,000, that's 600 hours.
That was 35,000.
Was that what the number was?
This
Yeah.
year, last year was.
Last year was
was
60,000.
But even just.
And I just don't see it.
200 an hour, it's
Yeah.
300 hours and that's.
But a lot of this is the administrators were out, where I come from, at 70 bucks an hour, and the producers were out at 140 on average. I mean, you average that out.
I lost track of who's on the Ag Committee. We got any documentation? I haven't seen it.
Names I've heard on the Ag Committee are Shane Broadwell, Tim Hardy,
Is Nancy
Nancy Weber.
what's his name, from Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Oh, you're talking about
Paul Forestier.
Forestier.
The Democratic legislator that just didn't run again.
Tom Drum.
No, the girl. Tom Drum on it too?
Heather?
Oh,
Heather
Heather,
Duck on
yeah.
it. I'm not sure exactly who else.
I know they had restaurant owners and you attended several meetings.
I didn't go to any of them.
Oh, Shane, I thought Shane said he had met with you.
He met with me separate.
Oh,
We
okay.
talked about
Nancy
things,
Weber, was she on that as well?
Yeah, I think so.
but Bill, from the bistro in Wadsworth, went to some meetings.
A very important player here is the railroad system. It is both sides of our county. The system coming out of Syracuse has problems. And I think they should be partners in this if they're gonna work with us, see if they'll work with us. They're very important because bulk items in agriculture are shipped mainly by rail in most cases. And they should be involved because they've right now held up a lot of projects, expansion and so on, because of the rail system.
Well, we just don't know who that is right now, with CSX trying desperately to get out of the picture.
My understanding, based on talking to Tim Hardy the other day, was that Canadian National has, they may come to terms, and they haven't closed on it yet, but they've come to terms on the purchase of the.
Bill Schreiber's on the infrastructure committee, I believe. Is he also on the agricultural? Because they're a big player now with working with Addis and Purdue and those guys, and I know they're trying to.
The truth.
They have a major project that they're pushing. It's a $27 million project expansion of the port, specifically for agricultural product export.
Dave, who else is on the infrastructure?
Myself and George Joyce and Mark Southwick and from Woodmackey.
Mike Treadwell, I'm
Mike.
there.
Yeah. And
You're on the,
Barry.
on the ag committee. You're on the,
one other person I can't think of right now.
Cause I'd like to have Barry,
Brian Anderson is on there. I
Brian.
believe. Yes.
I'd like to have Barry be part of. you
That
know,
was a
the
timing
moving
issue,
forward.
every one of those meetings for me, that's the
Yeah.
trouble with the
Yeah.
travel, and these are scheduled out way in advance, so I can get there.
Right.
Mhm. So I guess, to cut to the chase, do we wanna work with Center State for the next year in helping us develop our short-term and long-term plans for infrastructure and, agribusiness?
I don't have a problem with it, but I don't think it's necessary to call, Andrew.
We have to call him today.
I think that the thing of it is, what you said though, is that he needs to meet
Yeah.
with the committees and develop a better proposal than this. I mean, I don't know of any reason to
So I
discuss
just wanna
this.
call him and share that with him.
And again, that proposal's all money up front. That's not money after deliverable.
Yeah, I know,
Right.
I know.
We have a proposal from Center State CEO, and I know we worked with them last year. Would it behoove ourselves to at least get one other quote from someone else to at least know if the numbers are in the same ballgame? I don't know if we have time to do something like that, but if we're having to hold off anyway, because we need
Well,
to.
part of this, and I'm gonna be honest with you, the county is, is the one that we partnered with to start this. And the county is a player in this also, and so we are working with the county as far as, doing it. So I think it's a shared partnership with the county as far as trying to put these together. And if we go out on our own and find a third party or something like that, I think it just goes contrary to what we started with.
So the county's
Well,
gonna have to participate.
No,
Yeah, no,
not in this, not in
I
this.
think, so Gary's reference to the county is that you're all familiar with the fact that there's people over there who don't understand. Morris can tell you, there's a lot of his colleagues who don't understand economic development. They don't understand the two agencies here.
keep in mind, we're on.
They don't always see value in what's being done over here because they don't know. And so there's some trepidation about doing nothing and having that misunderstanding grow to desire to make drastic changes. So doing something shows some progress. Is this something that you wanna do? Maybe, maybe not. Are you ready to do that? Maybe, maybe not. But you make a good point, specifically Barry, with, who is the best person to do this? If you're gonna do engineering analysis and a debt analysis and, look at all the wastewater systems. Do these guys have the knowledge and capability to do that, or should you just be going out to an engineering firm that does that every day? And then perhaps there's another organization like DANK or somebody who can say, look, we went through this regional authority process and here's what we had to do, and you can expect to have to do similar things. Here's the hurdles we had, watch out for these. Maybe these guys aren't the right people to do that. We don't know, we should talk about that. And quite frankly, the piece about being paid up front, this was your money, your project, it was a good faith effort to demonstrate continuing to move forward, but if the county was undertaking this, we would never agree to pay before services were delivered. But that's us.
I bring up these infrastructure problems. I've been dealing with some of these issues, and I think it's something we should definitely look at, because it's a big player in supplying our products to and from our county. And I'll tell you, they're not very cooperative.
The other question I had, and I shared this with Tim, because Tim Hardy, he had some questions. I said, Tim, what the part that bothers me is if you went to Center State as a member, and I think Operation Oswego County is a member, the county's a member. If you went to them and said, hey, I have a project, I wanna invest some money, I wanna create some jobs, can you help me get funding to make that happen? Would they charge you $3,000 to do that for you? And if we're members and we have a project and we need help getting funding, why would we pay money for something they give to somebody else as a service because they're a member? So it just doesn't sit well with me, not knowing what our expectations should be. What do we get as a member? Just, we get to go to luncheon every year at whatever, $50 a head? I don't know. There's some expectation of some level of service for the money you pay. I never saw a la carte menu when it said join our organization for X, and if you want anything else, here's what we charge.
It may not be that difficult to RFP this and just see if there's any interest anywhere. Maybe not. I'm one vote, so it isn't gonna sway the whole deal. I'm just saying that it doesn't seem like we got value last time. And this doesn't seem real pointed.
This is a more specific project than last time too.
Yeah, and this is definable. It could have been us last time. We may have given poor direction.
I think we know what we want at this point in time. And it might be easier to define something in an RFP or use one of our engineering companies, CNS or somebody like that, or the other one that you mentioned that does this already. Might be easier to do that. What I see these guys doing is just coordinating everything.
They're not really doing.
And right. I think that's what we're paying for. Is
Facilitation.
coordinating. I mean, unless somebody else wants to step up and be the coordinator, and find people to do things and have, attend meetings and take the information in.
Private firm may do both. I'm not saying that these aren't, that don't seem to be the answer to me. Without at least exploring, maybe nobody answers the RFP. Then you know your answer, but maybe we don't have time for that either. I'm just saying, not seeing it.
When you got into your, with your calculations, the upfront, what I read is about $14,000, right? So 9 for the first project and 5 for the other.
Mm-hmm.
Using $100, that's 140 hours, right?
Yeah, and it may be more than that, but whatever it is, it's still
Well, 14
Yeah,
by
sorry.
100, that's 140 hours, that's
3 weeks.
Right.
So, again, I'm one voice, but I don't see the value.
I'm not criticizing any plan, but I'm saying the plans that I've run into do not provide for a lot of infrastructure that's existing and taking care of it and have it being developed. That's what I've run into, and I'm talking about, look at the city of Fulton's right now. We got the Bird's Eye properties, and we got the Nestle properties, and of course the Miller site. These are all prime areas, and the transportation in and out, and a number of other things that have to be done in those areas to promote agriculture or any kind of economic development is necessary. Infrastructure is the key.
One thing I would say, and not saying in support of or against this, is that we are running against the clock in terms of if you're gonna try to get some URI funding. We don't know what the deadline is. I mean, it was originally stated to be a 5-year program. We're starting year 5. And if we kind of just keep spinning our wheels forever on this, we may eventually just run out of time and opportunity to acquire some of that money. And that's not necessarily just for this and these coming things, but also for other projects that are out there. So I would say if we do decide to delay or hold off, we can't do it very long because we may just miss the boat completely on I think there's a $200 million or $180 million or something still out there in URI money.
When I asked Andrew that question, he said, we think we have our finger on the pulse of what's going on with that money, and we believe that the November, December window is appropriate.
It seems late to me. I think more like a May, June window would make more sense.
Ideally, earlier would be better, but,
Is the applications open all,
It's-
anytime?
yes.
Rolling.
open, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's something, if we do decide, I mean, it's based, you know, the way I look at it, it's based on the recommendations of the two committees, agribusiness and infrastructure. If they think it's money well spent and they can serve us and do what we need to have done, you know, based on conference calls or a call or a timetable with Center State, I'm fine with it. If you don't feel we're getting our bang for our buck and you feel like, you know, that it's not serving us the way we want, you know, then we do it. All I know is, Nick's been talking to Shane and Tim, and they were really advocating to meet with Center State, you know, and set something up. So,
To nail down
yeah,
the plan. And they had a couple of, like, 2 other areas in agribusiness that they thought we should focus on also, concurrently with this. But one being a year-round farmer's market, and the other being some things that we might be able to do as far as making the county more attractive to brewers locating here that wouldn't be craft brewers that wouldn't be a major lift to be able to do those things. And to kind of there's another county in the state that has done that and had some success with it, and kind of not reinvent the wheel and just follow a plan that they've worked. But that said, this project, I think, with with Phoenix and so forth, I think we need to try to move forward as quickly as we can. And my sense is, my proposal would be, let's have Andrew Fish meet with myself and the members of the agribusiness committee and hammer something out that we can agree upon is a grant writing proposal to write a grant to get this project moving, and maybe we shorten the timeline, we do the things that we think we need to be done. If they can't do that, then we go find somebody else. But let's set it up the way that we want it set up. Let's make it happen on our time frame, not on whatever time frame they want, and let's get this thing moving and get it done. The other part of it, my sense from hearing from everybody around the table is, maybe they're not, and even frankly from talking to Andrew last week, they don't have the chops to understand the engineering aspect of what would be happening as far as that's concerned. What we were asking them is to get some key players around the table, help us reach a consensus, and to write an RFP so that an engineering firm could analyze everything for us. I don't know that needs to cost $20,000. I was thinking it'd be more like 10. All right, but we don't necessarily. That is not on a time frame. All right, we can delay that a month, and it's not going to kill us. All right, it's going to be a 20-year project anyway. So if we wanna engage with Dank or we wanna engage with somebody else on that project, maybe we get the infrastructure committee together, meet again and have some focus around this and maybe talk to Jim Wright and see if he can come or send someone down to a committee meeting of that committee and help us understand the challenges and things that they've had and find a way to move that forward. And if we have at that point a clear path that we could use Center State, then we make a proposal back to them and say, hey, fit into this. If not, we'll just go with the agribusiness part of it and move on. Does that make sense?
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, if the committees think they're getting value, I'm just not seeing it, so I don't have any problem with it.
I mean, that's why I'd like to see, you know, you guys meet with him and develop what deliverables are gonna be. What are you gonna expect? What's your committee expecting them to do?
And you're gonna get paid once we get the deliverable.
And,
That's the real
and the
world.
same with infrastructure too, right?
I mean, is it normal practice to, you know, give them a 30% down or something like that, and then give them the balance on delivery?
You could, the money's so small though that, you know, if you wanna give them a 20% retainer, and then, that's not unusual.
Solid coffee.
All
We
right,
do
so,
know about engineering studies,
we-
we'll lay that out.
are we on the same page on this then? As far as, Andrew meeting with both agribusiness and infrastructure, hammering out the deliverables, the timetables and everything to their satisfaction. And then they'll come back with their proposals and we'll,
I would say, let's have Andrew meet with the agribusiness part of it right away. Let's have the infrastructure committee meet on its own first and decide at that point if Andrew is the way that we wanna go, and then meet with Andrew if that's.
Right, cause the agribusiness one is the one that has the shortest fuse.
I think we gotta get moving, and I think December, whatever you might say, I think that's late, and we need to get the money, the thought process moving fast.
It may not hurt to get at least some thoughts from necessarily an engineer or some other private professional to see what they think about what we're asking for.
then, like, if we have to go RFP, give it a certain time and everything, you know, I don't know how long that takes.
We wouldn't have to, because this is professional services. You could reach out and you could reach out and say to, I mean, if you're using CNS for as much as anything, or B&L or whoever it is, here's what we're looking to do. About what would it cost and what could you do for us in the timeline. Wouldn't have to be nothing more than an email.
See, personally, I don't have time to do that myself. That's something, you know, we'd have to, I don't know how we do it,
I don't know what the needs are, I'd find time.
so. But I told Andrew that we would give him a call, so I'm gonna let him know. But I wanna make sure that, you know, we're all on the same page on this, as far as, what we expect and what we're asking from Center State.
Right, and that I don't think I can relate to, because I'm not.
I mean, as far as
Agriculture.
infrastructure, Dave, you could bring and talk to that company, Hank, is it?
Development Authority of the North Country, yeah, I can talk to them.
Can I have Andrews sit down with, some of the leaders in the infrastructure and, discuss, or how do
I
we
think
separate up?
Have some internal discussions about it first, and then when we have a better feel for consensus on where we wanna get and how soon we wanna get there, then we can, I think whether or not we want them to actually play a role, needs more discussion.
But I think
So
they
if I
can
was
play
gonna
a
say
role.
anything to him, if I was gonna say anything to him today, I would just say, look, we really appreciate that you took time while you're on vacation to put this together. We only got it yesterday, we need to, meet with the two subcommittees and talk about it before we can really make a decision on it. We'll get back to you pretty soon.
Good enough.
Okay. Alright,
And you can do that now, or you can do it after, or whatever.
no, I told him I'd be calling him probably in about 5 minutes, so.
Did you dial that? You just have to dial 567-5250.
Oh, you don't have to dial that.
Yeah, you don't need that.
Anybody chime in, Nick?
System adds it automatically, 50
I think you can handle, I think you know.
Well, I know, I don't know,
Short
I'm
and sweet.
total agreement with it, but, I know. Cause now I'm getting different,
Yeah.
versions of what we discussed and everything.
Hello.
Andrew, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Sorry we didn't get back to you sooner. We've had quite a lengthy discussion on a lot of issues. And we wanted to touch base with on your engagement proposal you sent us last night.
Yep.
And right now the
Gary,
consent.
before you continue, I just want to say for the benefit of our video conferencing that we have Andrew Fish from Center State CEO on the phone, who've just dialed in to continue on with this discussion.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. We've been discussing it and everything, and what we'd like to do, Andrew, since we just got it last night, there were some questions, and we emailed or texted you some of the questions, emailed some of the questions, is have the subcommittees take a quick look at it, because they hadn't seen it yet. Dave looked at it, I just gave it to Nick, and Shane and Tim I got it quick last night. We were wondering if subcommittees could take a quick look at it, and then get in touch with you to have a meeting to discuss what they think is to modify the timetable and the arrangements and everything with Center State.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I know, the short time frame of getting it last night, I think that there's a lot more discussion we could have around, some of the deliverables and specifics around those, and obviously that needs to come from the committees. And we did try and pull those groups together between last month's meeting and this, but timing didn't work. So I think it does make a lot of sense to pull them in and get some feedback on the deliverables. I think the two things I would say, I know that the timing came up as a question since when I sent that last night versus when you put in a request for the URI. And I think certainly, you could move faster on that if you wanted to. I think the challenge there becomes making sure that two things have happened. One, you've done some work on leveraging a private sector investment, because that's somewhat critical and not as critical as it was in the first couple of years, as we've seen with some of the recent announcements, but it would still make the case more strongly as it relates to those last dollars and getting them allocated. And then I think the second aspect of that is making sure that the advocacy that needs to be done in Albany prior to those type of requests going in, not just in Albany, but also with the Regional Council Executive Committee here locally, making sure that you've got all the support on board before you put that application in, because having the opportunity to get folks educated on it and up to speed on it and ready to move once those applications go in are critical. So while October to December may seem like a long way out to do that, the best chance to getting dollars allocated is having the best plan in place. Now, that said, if we start hearing things that those dollars are going to be allocated and people are lining up and there's requests that are going in, certainly you want to accelerate that timeline so that you don't miss the window. But as of right now, I don't think we're anticipating that those will be fully deployed before the end of this year. Second thing is related to the infrastructure proposal, the wastewater. Certainly I think, Nick, we talked before when we were on the phone about the fact that, we're not an engineering firm, so there's certainly some feasibility analysis that needs to be done, some critical infrastructure analysis as it relates to the 10 existing systems. But when I was in Cuba County and they have a countywide water and sewer authority that they established in 1995, again with some state legislation and county legislation. The real challenge there, and the real reason why it hasn't been as successful as they hoped it to be, is that they just went ahead and established it and didn't do the groundwork of getting the support from those independent operators and the municipalities. And so I think regardless of how you proceed with that, getting that buy-in and getting the opportunity for those folks to participate in whatever that mechanism looks like, whatever that authority is critical, because it's at that scale that you start getting the operational efficiencies and the ability to make those investments more strategically. So those are the only two comments I would have on that, and I think it's important to get you guys to a place where you're comfortable with the deliverables this year going forward, and making sure that we understand what we're delivering for you and what you're expecting.
Yeah, and I do want to thank you for taking the time during your vacation to put this together. I mean, you did lay out a very good timeline, and, you know, I like the way you broke it out. It's just that right now, with the committee, you know, I got Nick here, obviously, and Dave Turner's here at the meeting, and, they're gonna be, working with the two different committees to, look at the proposal and get back with you and, just kind of, make sure that, you know, the timeline and everything is something that we're comfortable with and that you can deliver to us for.
Absolutely.
So, anybody have any more comments or questions, for Andrew?
Well, Andrew, it's Nick here. I'd like to reach out to you, in order to set up a meeting with that Agra group at some point in the next couple of weeks, so that we can flesh this out as far as what is exactly expected and what we can and cannot expect. And then, we'll try to get together the other committee, offline, and hammer out our own thought process on because you're not the engineering firm, et cetera. You know, how can we use Center State on this, or should we just start going directly down a different road? And so that question has been raised. So, I think we'd like to have that meeting first with that group, and then bring you in afterwards, if that makes sense to you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said before, I mean, this is something where, you know, we want to be helpful, we want to be supportive. You know, if at any point the sense is that that's not the direction that you guys feel comfortable going, that's perfectly understandable, and we, you know, continue to be good partners, and we continue to operate, you know, as a regional economic development organization and supporting your initiatives, but, you know, just in more broader sense, as opposed to the more, you know, direct engagement and facilitator and grant writer.
Great. Anybody else, any questions or comments or anything for Andrew Morris?
Yeah, Andrew Morse or Bello. Andrew, what kind of relationships do we have with the rail systems, for example, here in our counties, both Oswego County and as well as Onondaga?
So we've got, you know, the main players that we have in the rail industry is CSX right now, which has took over most of the Conrail system. You've got two short lines with the Finger Lakes Railroad and the Norfolk Southern Western and NYS&W, New York Susquehanna and Western. There we go. And then CN, Canadian National, is actually in the process of acquiring what's called the Montreal extension from CSX, which would make them a significant player in Oswego County. That hasn't been finalized or approved yet, but it would be part of that. I know there's a lot of concern around both the frequency and the consistency of service at the Addis facility, as well as, you know, we've had conversations with Bill at the port there, and his major concerns around, you know, what would happen if CN was a major player or not. He's got some concerns around that. And then, of course, there's the challenges that exist on the Fulton side of the west side of the river there, because of the fact that line has been pretty much inoperable from Baldwinsville north. You know, so we've been in conversations with some of the short lines about the feasibility of bringing that back online. You know, our relationship with the short lines are great. Canada National, actually it's not Canadian, Canada National, you know, did engage with us and had a conversation with us that they were looking to come into this area. So we've got some contacts there. I wouldn't call that necessarily solid relationship yet, but we're building that. And CSX is the, you know, 45,000 pound gorilla, and it's a you know, a relationship that at times is cordial and at times is standoffish, and it entirely depends on, you know, what they're trying to accomplish and what they want to get done.
I just want to bring up one point, and I'm not mentioning names or whatever. We wanted to put a water system and get in a municipal water system, and we got involved with it. And we had to use the rail system to put a line under the, it's now dead. We can't get the cooperation we want. This is the kind of things that I'm a little bit hesitant, because the rail systems are being sold to individuals and individual companies and so on. We all have the impression that it's owned by the Conrail or whatever. It's a governmental organization. It's been divided up in this state so badly by private people and many companies buying sections of the railroad and controlling it. And that's what we're faced with, as you well know.
Yeah, there's definitely laws and such in the books that make it very challenging sometimes to get any kind of right of ways, and it's always a fight.
And I don't expect you guys to be able to take a big hammer and do it all, I understand that.
So Andrew, I'm gonna have the two subcommittees get together, discuss it, and try to get in touch with you as quickly as possible, so we can, so you're not waiting on what we decide and what we need to do.
Okay,
All right?
sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
Andrew.
you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin and I have to leave in about a half an hour. We got a meeting in Fulton with the city on our, our spec building out there. So we're gonna have to get through the rest of it, otherwise,
Is there anything you gotta vote on?
Yes,
Gary?
15 and 16.
So let's hit,
We have to hit 14 first.
Okay,
I could say quickly on 13 that we're working with Dave Turner and others in Empire State Development to look at the possibility of current thinking is to have ask the IDA to fund a $500,000 loan fund at Operation Oswego County to provide financing for recipients of the businesses who are recipients of the READY money. This is along the Lake Ontario shoreline, businesses that were affected by high water. The program from the state is a 50% grant up to $200,000, and our concept is still under some review. We're still kind of working on the concept of how these loans will be made. That if we fund the loan program over to Operation Oswego County, of course, that would be in that organization's bailiwick to approve or not. But these loans would basically match the state money, so in a sense would be bridge financing. But the way we'd set them up would be more or less permanent working capital financing, a term loan, so that the business would have be able to complete, hopefully with our money plus their own funds for the other 50%, would be able to complete the project. Then they could repay us or pay Operation Oswego County over time, and enjoy the state's money as basically an infusion of working capital. So we think it's a good structure. We've worked on the structure with the fees and the interest and payment deferment period in order to provide the 5% local match, and that's one of the. So we're under review with this with Empire State Development, and we don't have any. Their legal department is looking at what we've proposed and still under some consideration. So I think that maybe at the next meeting, the next IDA meeting, we would be more prepared to get approval to fund this.
We anticipated having an answer by now, we don't, so we wouldn't wanna ask you guys to make a decision without having all the information.
right,
But we're
so
looking
this would be monies through Operation Oswego County.
We funded a grant from the County of Oswego IDA from our pilot EDF fund to Operation Oswego County, for Operation Oswego County to administer these loans, collect, make the credit decisions, and so on. As we've done in the past, we've done this before with manufacturing initiatives and some other loan funds.
There's some issues related to each of these projects requires a 5% local match from the state to be able to get the state grant, and there's obstacles in place for giving money from a government entity, a local government entity, to a company. So we're having to be creative in looking at it as ways of how do you provide that local match within the constraints they've created. And we've developed this idea, but they haven't told us that that'll work yet.
They haven't given their blessing on it yet.
It's too creative for them, so.
They've gotta be having to cross that bridge with every locality that they're
Yeah.
doing it to, right?
Every county.
The state portion of this is a grant to these businesses?
Yes, yeah.
So we're funding their half, helping
It's a
pay
loan.
their half as
Bridge
a loan.
Yeah.
So that
Like
they-
other state grants, that money,
Yeah.
they refund it at the end of the project, they don't put the money up front, so
we're funding the state half,
in a sense.
and then they're
We're bridging
paying us, we're bridging the gap to the
Yeah.
state half.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, cause it could take a year for them to get the money back from the state, or 6 months or whatever.
The business would have to come up with the other 50%.
We're not helping fund their 50%.
No.
We're helping fund.
In fact,
we're
we,
funding the state 50%.
part of our proposal from the terms of the plan that Operation Oswego County would roll out would be that our lending exposure is capped at that 50%, because we view there's some risk in this
Yeah.
potential loans,
Oh, yeah.
you know, especially with what we see coming down the lakes for 2020,
Yeah.
so. It will be a riskier loan pool than we've probably tolerated in the past. Yeah.
The other thing that we don't know yet, and we've asked Empire State Development, is how many businesses in Oswego County, how many campgrounds or marinas applied for this, and what is the total amount that they're seeking, so.
It could be lower, it could be higher, we don't
Yeah.
know.
So the 500,000 is something of a shot in the dark at this
Right.
point. With some information about at least who's applied, we could try to make some educated guess of what we might need.
So we're table 12,
Wait, yes.
is that right, Gary?
Yes.
Table 12, okay.
Yeah.
13.
13.
13 just discussion for now and
Okay.
be on the next
So now
agenda.
move on to 14 then.
Yeah, and let me try to take this, and Gary, others feel free to jump in. Please see your blue tab, number 14. What we've seen, and Len, I know you've talked to Gary about this as well, that we've seen the solar projects, the solar developments that we've approved have applied for and also received by our agency a number of different levels of deviations from our standard UTEP for solar, for any pilot projects or straight lease transactions. So the page on with number 14 on it is a summary of the projects we've approved, and then the 3 that are proposed currently. 2 of those 3 are on the agenda this month. SSC Scriba will most likely be on the agenda next month. They're pending their seeker. So you can see if you just look at the pilot term section, which is more or less in the middle of the sheet. Look across the years, 2020, 15, 20, 20, and now there's 2. One of the ones on for approval today is asked for 25-year pilot. Initial amount per megawatt, you read across that column, you can see that's varied as well. There's some commonality in a 3,000-ish number, but there's been some variation, 3,000 per megawatt. And then annual escalator, consistently we've approved 2% only, but the projects now up for review and approval are varying from no escalator to 1.25%. Sales tax exemption really varies a lot by the project. In fact, the SSC Oswego up for approval today has declined the sales tax exemption, which presumably means they're purchasing their equipment from out of state, the equipment that goes onto the solar farm. So I would like to ask the IDA to consider a policy on solar projects. We could continue to discuss exactly where this policy should fit into our structure, maybe at the next meeting, but there's been some discussion whether it could be in an additional section to our UTEP, where today our UTEP has a 20-year standard for manufacturing projects, 10 years for non-manufacturing. It would be feasible to add whether it's the best move, I don't know, but we could add a section there for commercial solar developments. Maybe another answer that might be better would be to have a standalone policy that could still be up on our website as the solar project tax exemption policy for the County of Oswego IDA. That we could, the advantage of having a policy is, there are many aspects to the advantages. One is that when we're contacted by solar developers, or if they're researching our county and what benefits might be available through the IDA, it'd be right out there in black and white. This is our policy. And it would help us pre-negotiate these deals that might come in. Today we don't have a policy, so basically they've been told by Barclay Damon or our own staff to just apply for we don't have a policy, apply for what you want, basically. And that's the result of that is the projects we have on deck today that we'll get to shortly. So I suggest we consider either standalone policy or an additional section to our UTEP, and I'll ask Kevin to comment on that in a moment. But you can see at the bottom of the sheet what I propose is our standard policy for solar projects. You can read that yourselves. But for the benefit of the camera, $3,500 per AC megawatt, 2% annual escalator, a 20-year term, and that we work out either through subdivision or Kevin's work with the assessor to that the pilot would only apply to acreage developed into the solar farm. The rest of the parcel will be subject to normal tax. So if there's any improvements or just other lands that aren't part of the solar development, they would be taxed as the assessor sees fit as a prorated share of the overall tax parcel. And then the other part of that we could consider would be, as we often do in our policies, allow this body some discretion to deviate from this policy if, for example, the reason for deviation might be development of a brownfield site or an otherwise undevelopable site, a landfill, some other case that we might come across. Perhaps we might consider a lower pilot payment, just something to consider. But in any event, our policies generally do allow this board some wiggle room, I guess, to allow exceptions. If it's not part of the UTEP, every case it will still be a deviation, so there'll be a deviation letter sent to the taxing authorities, the school, the town, the village if applicable, and the county, as we would today with any deviation, or including solar projects. So if we make it part of the UTEP, we don't need to do the deviation letters. But Kevin, I don't know if do you have the information about what it takes to modify our UTEP?
Yeah, I mean, adding it to the UTEP, I think frankly opens up the UTEP for additional
Right.
modifications that may be an unintended consequence. because this, as Kevin just mentioned, is a deviation, in any event, there is deviation language within the UTEP that allows for the IDA to deviate from the UTEP. So I would think of this as a subcategory of that deviation. I do believe, you know, subject to being told by a, you know, a state authority or somebody higher that this is not appropriate. I think having a policy that's specific to the solar projects that is in the form of a deviation, but we're, as Kevin says, you know, exposing it to, which is in black and white, we're revealing it, we're being transparent about it. I think that would stand, you know, any test or potential legal challenge. And the other thing it does is it creates consistency and equality across the board, because frankly, why is the price different in Albion than it is in Scribe or the town of Oswego versus the town of Richland, right? So there's really no measurable difference just because of the location, right? So creating a consistent policy that puts all developers of solar projects, but all landowners that are considering these projects on an equal footing, I think gives you know, gives the policy some credibility.
And one thing I didn't add is that what I propose here is within the NYSERDA guidelines for our area, and also it's in line with my discussions with Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board. You could see that my proposed policy matches up with a project called Abundant Solar, which is more or less the middle one. That's the project that was shepherded through. If you remember, Chris Carrick came here with the representative from Abundant Solar. That's their guidelines and sort of advice to IDAs of what the policy could be. So.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, this is the NYSERDA. They actually have a pamphlet that's, you know, for solar payment in lieu of taxes. And they give you a chart, and it's all based on the region you're in. We are in the National Grid region. Arguably, I think we could, you can say we're in the Central Hudson. I know we are for nuclear transmission, right? But and they give you a high and a low. So Central Hudson is a low of 26. This is per megawatt, $2,600 up to a high of 76. National Grid is 1,700 to 5,100 high low.
So 3,500 is right in the middle.
I think 3,500 is a good number. It seems like a good spot to land, at least initially.
So, yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question about line number 4, the pilot applies the acreage developed by the solar farm. Is there a certain amount of buffer zone that it has to be included in this, or? So,
great question. All of that's really subject to local zoning regulations and whatever the local zoning has as a buffer. Now, Scriba, for instance, doesn't have zoning, but they have site plan approvals, and they have at least a 35-foot buffer between commercial and residential. That's not a lot. In the case of the Scriba Solar project, however, the closest panels are in excess of 100 feet away from any residential structure, and it's buffeted by pretty thick woods.
Okay.
So, you know, every project's a little different.
But the answer there would be whatever the zoning required would be subject to the pilot.
Right. Yeah.
Or and then they lease a certain defined part of
They
the
do.
parcels.
I mean, they don't try to shoehorn these projects in. I mean, it you know, they're looking for spots that cleared obviously, and you know, have a lot of land around it. A lot of them will put security fencing up so that you're not you know, you don't have folks jumping in or animals, frankly. You know, they're typically, if it's a 2 megawatt project, you're looking at somewhere between, you know, 10 or so acres per megawatt. And you know, the bigger the project, the bigger the land.
Seems to be a little efficiency in land use as the projects grow in size.
The technology is changing too. There's now rotating panels, and that requires a little more space to accommodate for the rotating. So there's all kinds of variables that go into it, but ultimately, as Kevin mentioned, I mean, the tax exemption is on the solar array, the land that is in the solar array. And almost every one of our projects right now has additional acreage that is isolated and separated from the solar array, so the property owner is being taxed on that additional land, as well they should be. Now, a lot of them are farms, so you're gonna get the ag exemption anyway, or if it's still a farming, usable farm, you're gonna get an exemption. And on balance, most of these properties are, even with the pilot structure that we're proposing, the community is going to benefit significantly from these pilot payments, more so than what they would be receiving from property that's being used as a, ag or vacant land.
And sometimes that ag land,
Morris,
like these two projects have improvements that, like, we'll get to the specifics of these projects, but one has 3 pole barns, like modern generation pole barns, and one has 2 modern generation pole barns that are on the tax parcel, so they've been picked up by the assessor as improvements to the land already. So to exempt those types of improvements in addition to the empty land would be doing it probably a disservice to the
Yeah,
community.
really, frankly, be illegal. And I've already talked to the assessors; they're aware of it. What they do is, and this is all done administratively, they isolate the land that is in the solar array. They grant the exemption to that, and then all the other properties continues to be taxable.
Okay, Morris, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanna bring up a point here, what Oswego County is very ripe to this situation, because we have some of the small farms. I'm not trying to be critical of some of our operations, but these things come in, what kind of monies do they generate approximately?
Plus or minus $25,000 a year, plus sometimes to the landowner, plus the landowner may have the contractor remove some snow or
You're talking
cut
about per
brush.
acre,
No, total,
total,
per year,
I'd say
per
10.
year, but total.
for like a 10 acre, or what do you?
No, I've seen that for 25 acres, yeah,
25 to 30 acres. 'Cause I got-
25,000, around
I got-
1,000 an acre.
I got asked about our property.
Because that's what I'm saying, a lot of this is being picked up in our county. They're doing it because they're small farms. The dairy business is in the depths of depression right now. The dairy is, small farms just can't
You
make
can
it.
offload some of their tax liability too.
So there's people that are gonna do this, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because there is, as you say, Kevin, rules and regulations that certainly have to be found or done.
David, you want?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if it's appropriate in your policy, but one issue that seems to come up very frequently is the developer's intent at the end of the project. And if there's a way to have language about some kind of commitment to decommissioning, that would benefit everybody, you guys and the property owners.
My thought on that is a good point. We could make that a policy idea to ensure that the language is there, but that's typically in the lease between the landowner and
But
the
you'd be
developer.
doing a service to the landowners
Yeah.
to,
to ensure that language is in
We-
there.
yeah.
You know, we entered into a couple agreements like
There's
that
also
in
bonds.
Mexico, and decommissioning was part of the agreement, through the planning board.
So you're suggesting our policy could include a requirement that the underlying lease includes a decommissioning plan and potentially
In order to be
bonds.
eligible to apply for your assistance,
Yeah,
the
Similar-
contract has to,
And that's not inconsistent with what we do now with, builder's risk insurance.
Right.
For IDA projects, it's just a certificate of, so in order to get the benefit, they have to provide us with proof of the decommissioning bond, or whatever the
plan
arrangement
and bond,
is.
I guess, much like a mining
They
license.
would just bond the decommissioning off.
Oftentimes, that's what they do.
Yeah. Big payments,
And-
so with that term.
And that's primarily, they're doing that with the municipality, right? Because they're the end, user, but having the developer provide that proof to us is at least,
We'll protect the
part of our due
landowners
diligence.
and the environment.
Do we know if the
Good
two
suggestion.
on the agenda have done that?
They're in the process of doing that. That both, Oswego's been approved, and there was a decommissioning aspect to that. Scriba is anticipated to be approved probably next month.
The one up for approval today is Volney. It's
Oh, I'm
Volney.
sorry. Yeah.
Only in Oswego.
I believe that was
Because at the public hearing it was discussed, but I can't speak to the particulars, Len, but the company rep was there and that question came up and he stated that the bond was going to be put in place.
There, do we have to wait for?
this year.
Can we, pass this, policy?
Maybe we could pass these as the parameters of policy, and Kevin could come to the next meeting with a written policy
Yeah.
for formal approval.
Yeah.
Would that be?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second, we have a motion, a second, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, very good, thank you.
These two now know of our potential policy?
I would say, based on, thanks to Kevin, SSC Oswego knows that there's a likelihood that
Volney
we're gonna, Volney probably does not, no, they do not.
I've not had any discussions
Yeah.
with the folks there, but
But we certainly have the opportunity at this point to go back to them and maybe, Kevin, would it be an approval based on certain terms, assuming the company accepts those terms?
Sure.
Today?
yeah, I think we set the terms and it's up to them whether they want to agree to it or not.
Yeah, or come here and argue it, I guess,
Right.
potentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
I know in my discussions with the representatives of the first one here, SSC Oswego, I generally outlined that proposal and I didn't get any pushback.
Okay,
So with number,
number 15,
yeah, number 15 is next. I guess I'll just, let's for expediency, go to the second page. It's stapled to number 15 rather than the cost benefit analysis is there, but the second page is something of an eye chart. But if you look at the top section, it shows both projects that are up for approval today. And you could read down through row by row. They're both, I'll try to cover some of them together. They're both 5 megawatts. One, Oswego, of course, is in the town of Oswego, and then the town of Volney. You see the location. The project size varies a bit between these two projects. Different developers, a little different design. Oswego will use the tilting panels. I don't believe Volney is. Volney will have some battery storage at the facility. You can see the parcel size on both exceeds the project significantly at 58 for Oswego, 59 for Oswego, and 72 for Volney. As I mentioned before, both projects have other improvements. We kind of covered that in our discussion of the policy. You can see the current taxes, fifth line from the bottom. And if you jump down to the bottom chart, you'll see, like, for example, Volney, current tax is 4,500 roughly, excluding special district charges, if any. Then first year, at what they've proposed would be 1,500. At our proposed policy, 15,000, excuse me. At our proposed policy, it'd be 17,500 of total tax revenue through the pilot program to the taxing jurisdictions. And on Oswego, 2,800 is the current taxes. At 3,500 a megawatt under our proposed policy, it'd be 17,500 in the first year, and then of course it carries down through the 20 years with the 2% escalator in that lower chart. We've had public hearings for both. The Volney public hearing, generally the hearings went well and were positive towards the project. The Volney hearing, one of the attendees made a specific point about the escalator, where the escalator requested was. Just a moment. Yeah. It was at the Oswego public hearing. There was a discussion about the escalator and that a 2% escalator, not without me prompting, around a 2% escalator would be more appropriate than 1.25. So I thought that was interesting feedback. Other than that, the Oswego public hearing, they were generally favorable towards the project and solar developments in general. There were only 2 attendees, plus myself. At the jump now to Volney, we had the Volney public hearing. It was quite well attended. Also generally positive comments. In that public hearing, we had the advantage of having a company representative there, so there's a fairly decent discussion about where the project was in its development and so on. Town of Volney has had a number of projects that are starting to come through the town's planning process, a number of solar developments coming through the town's planning process. So one of their underlying concerns that I heard was we're just doing too many solar projects and taking too much farmland into solar, but that didn't necessarily pertain to this project. This project was both have been fully approved by the town, up through and including negative deck on the seeker. So I think that's a brief but summary of this public
So the Volney one now, the parcel size is 72 acres.
Yes.
And so the project is only 25, so that other 50 acres then
Be taxable.
would remain taxable.
And my guess, because it is part of a working farm, that it's got farming exemptions, so,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
what
Yeah,
I-
it
but
does.
but it's still gonna be taxable
Okay.
with those exemptions.
And that's done, the assessor then
That's
really
strictly
is
the local assessor function. Yeah.
to do that, okay.
And we'll coordinate, Kevin will coordinate that with the local assessor as needed.
Yeah.
If these are
Okay.
approved, to execute. No other, I don't have any other comments on the public hearing, so I think that was quick, but.
Okay, so we have 15, the Valmy solar project.
I'll move the seeker.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor?
All right,
Opposed? Carried. Inducement?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any inducement?
Move it.
Any questions on the inducement? All those in favor?
All right,
Opposed? Carried. Okay, the pilot resolution?
Now, if I understood the discussion earlier, whoever suggested, whoever makes the motion might consider making a motion based on $3,500 per megawatt, a 2% annual escalator, and a 20-year term on the pilot agreement.
I'll move that.
And the decommissioning.
And to have a decommissioning.
Yeah, I've got, 5 things listed, yeah. Right.
Correct. The 4 I had in the print and plus number 5.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
5 would be commissioning bond.
Per our to be later approved policy.
Okay,
I'll second, Barry can second it.
okay, you made the motion?
No,
Len, and then Barry seconded.
Contingency.
So you go,
Okay, any other discussion?
yes.
All those in favor?
All right,
Opposed? Carried. Final approving resolution.
I'll move it.
Second.
Second. The final approving resolution, that would be based on, the outcome of the pilot resolution, Kevin? Or,
Well, the final approving resolution is the whole project.
Wraps everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
wraps
So-
it up.
Every other stuff we've done.
so everything, you know, if we okay this, it mean, that's includes the pilot being.
Correct, yep.
Okay,
If they don't accept the pilot, then
Yeah, then we're back to
back to square one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure in my head.
It's approved on those terms that we voted on the pilot.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
all right.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, the Oswego LLC solar farm, the seeker resolution,
I'll move it.
motion by Nick, second
second.
by Barry. Any discussion?
I'll mention this town of Oswego's the lead agency. I think we covered that already. For this, so.
Yeah, and they issued an
And it's
declaration.
that we have.
So we're just adopting their.
Okay, any discussion on the seeker? All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Carried. Inducement resolution,
I'll move it.
Barry, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Morris. Any discussion? Inducement, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The pilot resolution,
Similarly, I'll suggest whoever makes the motion under the 5 conditions: 3,500 per megawatt, 2% annual escalator, 20-year term. Pilot applying only to the acreage developed in the solar farm, and the decommissioning bond and plan.
Yeah, I'll move it per our
okay, we have a
new
motion.
policy.
Do I have a second? Okay, motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
All right,
Okay.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, final approving resolution.
I'll move it.
Motion by Nick, second by
Second.
Barry. We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
all right.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Any other business, Kevin?
I just want to take a quick moment. We had 4 IDA closings. Some are still in process this week, and I want to take a moment to thank Kevin and Caracoli Law for all their work. Teresa Wilson, also Barclay Damon. I think it's been a big effort. This week was important to close some agreements because of the taxable effective date being March 1st, and there was a big push on behind the scenes to get these things done. And I think we accomplished all of our clients' goals this week, or in the process of completing them here in the next day.
As long as the weather doesn't impact the 2
Well, I
o'clock
think-
closing today, I think.
Oh, in
we'll be
Syracuse,
up
right?
In
Today, yeah,
Syracuse,
yeah.
but yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But so thank you very much on behalf of the IDA and myself. I don't have any other business.
Okay, next meeting date. Do we have a date that you'd like
Oh,
to?
I'm sorry. How about October?
October. Looking for March, eh?
Yeah, maybe the week of March 23rd. How about Thursday the 26th?
I'll be, in training, that's, the training that they have every year for the, planning board, zoning boards and everything else, so.
Alright.
Tuck Hill thing?
Yeah,
Plus, would it Wednesday the 25th?
I got it wide open.
Works for me.
25th at 9 o'clock?
I'm wide open.
Okay, Wednesday, the 25th at 9 o'clock.
Prefer to stay away from Fridays, that gives us some, some business days to get.
9 o'clock's good for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, 25th.
As you can see.
9 a.m. Okay,
You need to go.
we have to leave, Kevin and I have to leave with Austin. There's a video that was
Do I
sent,
have a motion to adjourn?
well, yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
was gonna
Oh,
do
I'm
that.
sorry.
But there's a video for anybody who wants to see it. Dave sent it to me. It's from Camoing Associates. It's a 10-minute video and it talks about economic development and everything. And I thought it'd be appropriate to show it, but I didn't want to do it during the meeting. I wanted to wait till after adjournment. That way, if somebody had an appointment or had to leave, but if anybody wants to watch it, you're welcome to stick around and watch it. So, okay, motion to adjourn.
11:45.
I'll move it.
Nick, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Good meeting.